Hello, everybody, and welcome to the French Grand Prix review for the Winging It Formula One podcast. And I mean, we're in a bit of disbelief here because we had a good race. We had a good French Grand Prix. What? You're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be the boring race where we speak for an hour now about how much we hate France for Formula One and how much Formula One needs to change and how much is wrong and how everything is bad and how much we can't see anything because of the haze on our eyes from those stripes are so annoying. But anyway, we're not going to do that because we had a good race, didn't we, guys? I'm Freddie Coates, and I'm going to introduce you to my co-Formula One podcast presenters. I have got Adam Dickinson. Adam, say hello.
Hello.
And we've got Nigel Chiu as well. Nigel, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
There we go. I've got little minions, little puppets. This is great. We're going to have a great time today. Right, so let's get to it. What were your guys' opinions of the French Grand Prix? Nigel, you can go first because I made you say goodbye. Just prove you're actually here.
Yeah, brilliant introduction, first of all. But what a fantastic race. I would go as far as saying it's been the best. It was the race of the year, or F1 race of the year. I absolutely loved it. The intensity, the tenseness of the battle between Mercedes and Red Bull. They were pushing nearly all race. Hamilton basically had no tyres left. It came down to 1.5 laps to go. It was just fantastic. And strategically, it was as good as it gets as well, I think. So, yeah, for me, I think it was a race of the year. And this year has been bonkers already. So I'm just kind of trying to lap it all up, really, I guess.
Would you say it was kind of similar to the Bahrain Grand Prix? Because that's what it reminded me of a lot, except it was kind of ended the other way, that Verstappen was able to get the move done on Hamilton and win the race and get fastest lap and pole position. But yeah, so it felt very similar to that, I thought. Again, a fantastic race and probably the most unexpected race of the year. We've had Monaco's been brilliant, and now France has been brilliant. So I don't know whether we're going to have maybe not brilliant, but it was good. It was good. Yeah, okay, give it a good. So I don't know whether this means we'll have two stinkers at the Austria doubleheader, but we'll have to see. But no, I agree with whatnot. I don't know whether I put it as my race of the year, but
I good races. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I think for me, the bit when the two Mercedes were following Verstappen, they were all within like 1.5 seconds of 10-15 laps. And then we had the battle with Verstappen chasing Hamilton down. I think that's what kind of made it for me.
Yeah, I know what both of you mean with that. And I'll pick up on what you said there, Adam, about it being like Bahrain. I put a tweet out after I had seen the race saying, yeah, I thought this was like what Bahrain should have been. If you look at sort of the grid for Bahrain and the predicted strategies for Bahrain, if Perez hadn't had to start from the pit lane, if Bottas hadn't had a long pit stop, which put him out of the way for Verstappen's close at the end of the race, Bahrain really should have been Verstappen passing both Mercedes with 10 laps to go for the win on fresher tyres. And that's what this was. And if you look at everything, it was essentially a carbon copy of Bahrain. It was brilliant. And we came into this season going, oh my goodness, how can we get better than that? That was one of the best season openers. And like you say, Nigel, it's carried on throughout the year. And every race has had fantastic moments. There's been a few stints that have been a bit not great. But that's been what, a tyre stint, which just hasn't been good. But then the rest of it's been exceptional viewing. And I think the chances of two stinkers at Austria are quite low based on that track. I mean, we have had bad races there before, but
we thought the chances of having a good race or a brilliant race or the race of the season at Paul Ricard was quite low based off the track. So
it shows what a title fight can do. And speaking of that, we nearly had a swing in the title fight. It's kind of been the status quo of the past two races. Christian Horner said on the eve of the race to Sky Sports, he said, if we can win here, we can win anywhere. That's been touted a lot everywhere.
Bahrain, Portugal, Spain.
Didn't win, but they could have won. But now they have won here in a good way. So I'll ask Adam what he thinks, because clearly they should win every race.
Yeah, I think that'll be my prediction for the rest of the season. No, I think there's been two very sliding doors moments in the championship over the last two races. Obviously, Verstappen's crash and then Hamilton outbreaking himself or pressing the magic button or whatever. Was a potentially big swing that didn't happen again here at Paul Ricard. It felt like a very close race that in the end Red Bull got their strategy spot on and Mercedes couldn't do anything. They were kind of snookered. Or were they? We'll get onto that later, I imagine. But yeah, it feels like the momentum is firmly with Verstappen, which going, 3 races on from, or 2 races on? No, 3 races on from our Monaco preview where Nigel was saying it, this could be, the title decider, or this could, it could, I don't want to kind of put words in mouth because I can't remember exactly what the phrase was.
In a bit of a corner.
It could be like if Verstappen doesn't win here, the title could be over. And now it's completely the other way, that Verstappen seems to have all the momentum. Mercedes seem a bit of 6s and 7s. There's a bit of infighting there as well. So there's just so much of a momentum change from the first few races of the season. It now seems like ages since Hamilton was on top.
Yeah, I still think Monaco was key because Hamilton had such a bad race and the point swing. But I think this was a key race in terms of ultimate raw pace. I thought it would be a Mercedes track. I think most people did because of what we talked about in the preview, the characteristics of Paul Ricard. So for Red Bull to win on merit, even though personally I don't think they had the quickest car in the race, I think Verstappen nailed it and they kind of outfoxed Mercedes with the strategy, which we might talk about later. I think it's a huge moment that they could at least compete with Mercedes, and then to beat them was just the cherry on top of the cake. I can't say that phrase.
I think without like having seen any of the lap timing or anything, it kind of felt like Red Bull did have the pace advantage in the race.
I don't think they did because the way Hamilton and Bottas were on Verstappen's tail. If Hamilton didn't. If Mercedes, didn't mess up their strategy and Hamilton was first after the first set of pit stops, I think he would have pulled away and would have had a 4 or 5 second lead.
See, but you say that, but in the first stint when Verstappen had made his mistake, which it was actually, the worst moment for him of the race and probably one of his worst moments of the season, mistake-wise, I think. He was able to stick with Lewis and he was able to stay within a second and a half there, and Bottas was second and a half back. It was Bottas who was dropped back. Verstappen had the pace there in hand. And you look at Perez, it was always going to go slow in the first stint and conserve his tyres and go long. They already had planned that. And when, after a few laps of him conserving and then pushing a bit more, he was then matching their pace for the whole thing. So I think Red Bull do have the pace. It looks like through the practice sessions and through all the qualifying sessions, definitely Verstappen had the measure by half a second of the Mercedes cars, I think. On the softer tyres, yes. I know there's softer advantage for Red Bull. But they can heat up the hard tyres better than Mercedes anyway. So they've got that I think they've got that strategic joker that Mercedes don't have with the way they can run the car on the tyres. And I think, to be honest, I think they're pretty level on pace. I think we need to stop thinking about can Mercedes be beaten and start thinking about this is 2 teams at the top of Formula One.
I still think Mercedes have a slight, and we're talking a tenth or 2 tenths per lap, but I think Mercedes have a slight pace advantage in the race. And I think for Hamilton to be able to be right on the back of Verstappen for lap after lap and then still only be 1.5 laps away from winning the race despite being on hard tyres for 35 laps on a track that rained before high tyre degradation. I think Mercedes have a slight edge over Red Bull in the race with tyre wear and pace. So I really do think for Verstappen to win without having the fastest car was a massive thing. I think any time that a team doesn't win when they have the best car they've kind of dropped the ball, I think.
Well, I think
that comes on to...
I was just going to say that will kind of dictate the way we approach this, because I certainly don't think Mercedes had the fastest car, and it sounds like Freddie's kind of thinks it was.
I think they're level pegging.
Well, so, yeah. So, but we can come on to that.
See, yeah, let's go on to it, because I'm of the opinion, based on the street races we just had, that the Red Bull is a much better car based on its adaptability in comparison to the Mercedes car, and the fact that you can put it, it's essentially a plug-in and play car, whereas the Mercedes car needs to be nurtured in a way on these tracks. And even on these tracks, which are, the Mercedes tracks, because it's a traditional racetrack, hooray, because there's still, Red Bull can still just get the pace there, and they can go to Monaco and they can get the pace, and go to Baku and they can do it wherever, click, click, click again. But Mercedes are having to sort of, drag that car to the pace. And I think that's all credit to Mercedes as a team for being able to do that. But Red Bull have got the better car, in my opinion, really, thinking about it. Now I voice it out because of all of those characteristics.
I think so too, but I don't think they did on Sunday, because I think if Hamilton was ahead after the first pit stop, I think he would have ran away with it. I don't see how Verstappen would have.
But he was ahead after the first corner, or the first couple of corners, and he didn't run away with it.
Mercedes completely messed up with her strategy. Completely.
But if he ran away and he'd been like 5 seconds ahead of Verstappen when he pitted, or 10 seconds ahead, then
if he pulled away from Verstappen in the second stint anyway, he wouldn't have any tyres left. So nothing would have. I don't think that would have been a good strategy call anyway.
But if you look how close he got to winning the race with a bad strategy, with not having track position after the first pit stop, I think it suggests that Mercedes do have. I think Red Bull could have only won the way they did. I don't think they could have won the race any other way.
I think if the Red Bull had committed Verstappen to a one stop, they would have won the race then anyway.
Because he had to push, because Hamilton and Bottas had the pace, which was quite clear to me.
But they were pushing as well, which is why they didn't win the race. They didn't. It's not like they had. They were pushing, it's not like Mercedes forced Verstappen to push, forced him to have a pit stop, and then Mercedes could then waltz on.
I think they did. I think they did.
They didn't. They lost the race.
They never got close enough. There was never an overtake move.
Makes sense, that mate.
There was never. Have I forgotten? Was there an overtake or ever a chance that? Yeah, that's what I kind of. I think it wasn't.
Forced him to push though.
Yeah, but so were Mercedes. I think Mercedes were pushing, which forced Verstappen to push. But then Hamilton could never get alongside Verstappen. He could never get close enough to create a real overtaking maneuver or chance.
Bottas's drop off proves that. Bottas's drop off proves the amount of pushing that they were having to do themselves. Because the way he dropped off from Hamilton's a cold case because he's fantastic, but Bottas has that slight touch to tyre wear that Hamilton doesn't have, and that forced him to be way off come later on. Like by the time they were making those pit stops, Red Bull made that pit stop, they had a 3.3 second advantage in hand anyway to Mercedes, to Hamilton, and about a 7 second advantage to Bottas when Max Verstappen made his second stop. That's not by being forced to push, really. That's because the Mercedes aren't on his tail there. That's them basically pushing the hand of Mercedes, and Mercedes having to hold back to then react to Red Bull's pace.
No, because they couldn't go at that pace all race. So that's what I think. Mercedes and Hamilton and Bottas, they forced Verstappen to push straight after the pits, which forced Verstappen to go onto a two-stop because there's no way Red Bull had the pace to maintain that.
No, Mercedes had that pace. That's the point.
Oh, they nearly did. They were only 1.5 laps short.
Hamilton wasn't keeping
personal bests with 5-6 laps to go, which was outrageous.
It was outrageous that he was able to do that, but that's Hamilton. This is Hamilton.
They've got
it's
better
different.
tyre. They've got better race pace, I think.
Mercedes don't. If Mercedes did, Bottas would have got a podium. Bottas didn't. If Mercedes did, if Bottas beat Perez and was a bit more of a thorn on the side of Verstappen, I'll be giving you some. You'd hold water.
I think we're going to have to disagree.
I don't think you do. I don't think you hold water.
I think Mercedes have got a slight pace advantage in the race. Just like Red Bull have a slight advantage in qualifying.
But I think for me again, it comes down to the first stint that if Hamilton had been, had a pace advantage, he would have been able to get away from Verstappen, and it wouldn't have mattered that Verstappen was ahead of, or Verstappen wouldn't have had a chance to get ahead of him for the second stint, because he
Verstappen
would
was
have been able to
dropping
pull that
away.
gap.
I mean, it went to 2.8 seconds, I think, when Verstappen pitted. Whereas after the pit stops, Hamilton was all over him. Verstappen could never do that at any point in the first stint.
Well,
yeah,
fair enough. It's interesting. It's an interesting debate, and clear air comes into this kind of thing a lot. And like you say, if we won't know anything about that happening because of the point where Mercedes did drop the ball strategically. I know you were saying, Adam, it being snookered, and I think at the end of the race, the sort of the closure on the pit stop, the second stop for the Red Bull, was that kind of thing. But it's a definite mistake to have been undercut by Verstappen based on the fact that they forced that undercut with Bottas. So just to recap, Bottas was pitted, then Verstappen was pitted, and then Hamilton was pitted, and Verstappen's outlap was so cracking that he was able to take the lead into turn one from Lewis Hamilton with his hotter tyres, meaning he was able, because of the Mercedes warm-up being a little bit bad. And I think the Red Bull just had such a fantastic warm-up of his tyres in that outlap, and it took Mercedes by surprise, yes, but you would have thought they would have pitted Hamilton on the same lap that Verstappen was pitted based on when Bottas was pitted, but they were confident in that little gap that Nigel spoke about, and clearly were lulled to a false sense of security by their own tyre warm-up woes with Bottas's outlap. So do we think Mercedes should have pitted Hamilton a lap earlier? Do we think they did the right thing in trying to have a slightly shorter stint for the final stint, because for the second stint of the race for Mercedes? Because I mean, if they had pitted Hamilton one lap earlier and Verstappen had been ahead, then, and the whole thing had played out like that, then he would have been caught much earlier based on the tyre wear, I think. That one lap probably made all the difference for it being lap 52 for Verstappen to overtake, not lap 49 or something, really. But
because he would have been ahead, wouldn't it? Hamilton would have been ahead.
I think I'm
going to. Do you think if they pitted on the same lap, do we think they would have been? Because if Verstappen,
because he was ahead.
Yeah, unless Mercedes massively screwed at their pit stop, I think he would have been. I think I am agreeing with Nigel here that he's. I think he dropped the ball, or they dropped the ball there, and that's probably the defining moment of the race, that he stayed out. Verstappen was able to go out and get an absolutely stonking outlap, which is, there's probably other adjectives that you can use, but it was just superlative in the way he closed down that gap so much, and Hamilton just wasn't able to match that. And I think, if you switch it round, like Nigel said, it was a decent size gap. It was a few seconds when he went into pit. So, I think that was definitely a mistake from Mercedes.
I mean, I can't remember a time when the undercut has been that big. I'm having to think back to China or something 5 or 6 years ago, with different tyres, different cars and stuff. So I was surprised that it came out.
Flag.
Yeah, exactly. So I was surprised that they came out neck and neck basically. And 2.8 seconds is so much, but the warning signs were there, because I think Leclerc in the Ferrari, he set purple sectors on his outlap a few laps before, so there were signs. And I think it's the third race in a row where Mercedes haven't quite been on it strategically. In Monaco with Hamilton, they got it wrong, and in Baku, they lost the lead, dropped to third, and they lost the win here for me. So I think there's going to be some head scratching, I think.
In Mercedes' defence, that gap was big. And like you say, the undercut not being that big. And I think it's hard to say that this is a big strategic blunder in the way that I think Monaco was. And I think Baku, to an example, was pretty similar to this, because he pitted from the lead and ended up third in Baku, did Hamilton. So I think with this one, it's difficult, because like you say, Leclerc was setting purple sectors, but that Ferrari eats its tyres for breakfast. It can't help but warm up its tyres, and that's why the Ferrari had such a bad race, which I think we'll get onto. But it's just they don't have any option apart from destroying tyres in that car, in the Ferrari. So it's a bit of a hard one to kind of use as an example. I would think, if I were Mercedes.
I think it's a big mistake in terms of the consequence of it. I think like, it's maybe not it's not the worst kind of blunder that they could have done. They didn't put him like on another set of soft tires or something, but like I don't know,
put him on wet.
That would have been interesting.
But like I think in terms of a blunder that cost the race win, and well, I think anyway, cost the race win and gave it to their big championship rivals, then I don't think you can kind of get mistakes in terms of consequence that have much bigger effect than that. So yeah, like I think it's probably on par with some of the ones you mentioned there, Freddie. I think maybe Baku, I don't think it was so bad because I think Verstappen was quicker anyway there, and I think there's kind of less variables, or it felt kind of more inevitable that Verstappen would come out in the lead at some point, bar his crash, obviously. But here it does feel like a race that Mercedes were on top of, and would have been, set in the context of Monaco and Baku, would have been a great opportunity to bring back momentum in the championship fight, and they've kind of passed that up after Verstappen had made a mistake as well. I know I've been talking for a while, but I just want to touch on that because it's the second race in a row that Verstappen's made a key mistake that's cost him the lead of the race, and Mercedes haven't punished him for it. Well, okay, yeah, not a mistake, but he's had an issue. Something outside of his control has cost him the lead of the race, and Mercedes haven't been able to capitalise on it either time.
Yes. Yes, there's been an issue for Red Bull that Mercedes haven't capitalised on. Yes, I see your point. It's very true that Mercedes needs to sort of pick up the ball, because like it's been spoken about a lot. I've written things about this. We've all spoken about this. When Mercedes lose, they lose big, and like they can't. If there's a mistake, then they sort of they struggle to sort of recover from it. And Mercedes, they're all well and good from sailing from the lead, but it seems to be really difficult for them when there's that touch of pressure. And I'm sure we'll probably talk about this. But Adam, you mentioned that there was a bit of frostiness in the Mercedes camp, and you've got people more willing to speak their minds in a more tetchy and tense way than the no blame culture would have you believe is allowed in Mercedes. So it's difficult. They're definitely under the skin. Even Lewis Hamilton, even Paul Ricard got under Lewis Hamilton's skin, because when Paul Ricard said something about Lewis Hamilton of Valtteri Bottas changing chassis, I can't speak, changing chassis this weekend, Hamilton would have heard that when on like a replay or something, when they've written in the debrief, and would have went and said to Paul, "Oh, you said some lie about our chassis," and stuff like that. So even minor pundits like Paul Ricard are getting into Hamilton's head now. So there's
if Paul Ricard is a minor pundit, what are we?
We're major fans.
I remember doing chemistry A level, and it was like there's in a cell, in an atom, sorry, there's protons and neutrons, and we did the weights of them, and they're one, like kind of relatively they're one, and then there's electrons, and they're like 1 divided by 870 or something like that, 1000. It's like absolutely negligible amounts, and it feels like we are that absolute tiny compared to Paul Ricard, who is a minor pundit. Apparently, we are just negligible compared to that. Yeah, I just had a check, and it's actually 1/1836. So that is 1,836 of us collectively as a podcast are worth one Paul Ricard, who is of course a minor pundit.
We need to cut out some members to try and like make it bigger, like the fraction.
I'm not cutting any members, mate.
I wanted to make a periodic table reference, but my knowledge was not good enough. Probably should listen more. Anyway, moving on. Just something else on that
reactivity series. Sorry, carry on.
We are reactivitying to the race. So just kind of following on though from the initial point of Mercedes, it was Bottas's radio around. I think it was when Verstappen was coming up to him or past him.
Overtaken him, I think.
That he said, "Oh, why didn't I told you a two-stop was the way to go? Why didn't no one listen to me?" And it does not seem to be a very happy culture there at Mercedes.
He was right. He was
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
He was
absolutely.
right. And Toto
Don't
Wolff
normally
said
hear that
after
on the radio. Sorry.
Toto Wolff said after the race that he was really happy that Valtteri was finally speaking his mind and not internalizing it. Because in the past, look at 2018 and 2019, where he's kind of been soundly beaten and pummeled into the floor, and
Like
Valtteri would sort of like a drum and
soundly beaten, because you beat it and it makes a sound.
Yeah, he didn't make a sound. He's now a drum in a way. He's now he's still being beaten, but now he's making a sound about it.
Now being noisily beaten.
Yeah, he was like he was like a pillow, and now he's a drum. Where when you beat it, it doesn't make a sound, and now you beat him and he makes a sound. But yeah, so back to the point. Toto Wolff was happy that Valtteri's not
Freddie's pillows.
Yeah, it's really sad.
That's a spin-off podcast.
Freddie's pillows.
Is that like Ted's Notebook?
It's like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You always have to have a towel with you, but just because you do, it's life. So it's like that with me, but with pillows. I always have to have a pillow.
One of my favourite bed-related parts of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is where they say that very little is made in the universe at that point, because they pretty much found everything grows somewhere in the world. So they've got a whole planet that just grows mattresses. They're sentient mattresses that just walk around. It's brilliant.
Anyway, Toto Wolff.
Two quite large tangents there.
The sentient Toto Wolff is very happy that the sentient Valtteri Bottas is no longer internalizing his despair and is voicing it out, because it gets it off his chest, and he doesn't just stand there being really upset about things and can carry on trying to improve rather than being in a slump in the corner of the garage on his own, trying to do mind games and grossly failing. But yeah, I don't know with Valtteri. It's like, yeah, he was saying, but the engineers are always going to have a better picture of the race. And at the end of the day, like Nigel says, it was lap 52 for Hamilton, and without him, I mean, Bottas didn't put up much of a fight, but he still got in the way.
That's another key thing. One lap of Bottas defending, Hamilton could have won the race. Now, I don't think he needed to cover. He defended really early. I think if he stayed on the normal race line, Verstappen would have had to have made a pretty big lunge, which I don't think he would have gone for. So I think Bottas has made a racecraft error by moving to the inside, putting himself out of position for the next straight, personally.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Mercedes cars kind of defended the wrong way round, in that I was surprised Hamilton didn't cover off the inside when Verstappen overtook him. I don't know whether he just thought the game was up at that point.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I thought for Bottas, he, like you say, if he doesn't get past on that straight, or kind of get the move started on that straight, and obviously finished it on the next, the long right-hand corner afterwards, that's at least half a lap, maybe another full lap before Verstappen has a chance to line up a pass on him. So I agree. I think that was really costly, because then if it does go a lap ahead, then, that's Verstappen maybe catching Hamilton, say, at the start of the last lap, or kind of that. I think that was a key thing as well.
Rather than gaining 1 second, he might have lost 1 second. That's a 2 second swing. So it's those fine margins that, in a brilliant race like we had, those fine margins are going wide, which I think Hamilton might have done. Verstappen's mistake at the start. It's these small things which are now proving to be crucial, which is very exciting for us, of course. But it just shows the intensity of the battle.
Well, I think also worth pointing out that Verstappen did win by 3 seconds in the end. So it did, even in that 1.5 laps that he was out ahead of Hamilton, he did.
Yeah, I guess we don't know if Hamilton would have backed off, maybe.
Yeah, but I don't know. It felt like he did have a big advantage at the end. So should we talk about some other drivers?
I just got one final little thing to say about Bottas, and that's just yes, Bottas was correct to say that radio message, but Mercedes were correct to keep him out because of the protection to Hamilton. And I think for Bottas's race, he was correct to say you should have put me on a 2-stop, but it's the team game thing again that's let Valtteri down, unfortunately. But who knows? He showed some very good pace this weekend, and he was, to be honest, bar one mistake where he did knocked off his tyres in the first stint, he was right on the back of Hamilton and Verstappen for the majority of the race. So hats off,
I think that
Valtteri.
might have been
Keep that coming, mate.
I think that might have been a mistake in hindsight, because I think he was trying to prove a point by almost being in the fight for once, but then he completely killed his front tyres.
Yeah, I think I agree with Nigel.
Which cost him later on. He lost out to Perez as well. So he was kind of so up for it, wanted to prove that, yes, I'm just as good as these two brilliant drivers, but then it hurt him later on. So, yeah, kind of.
They wanted him there, though, didn't they? There was that radio message, which was, we're enjoying this, Valtteri, because he was in the fight, and it was. I think if it was Hamilton in second, maybe, and Valtteri could have been patched off to Perez in the first stint, but because it was an opportunity for it to become a 1-2 if he was the one getting past, then I think there's only one thing you can do, and that's go for the 1-2 in that situation, I'd say. But yes, Adam, let's move on to other drivers. You really wanted to. So why don't we talk about 5th and 6th place? McLaren drivers, Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, basically turning around what from a Saturday was looking like not the best weekend for them, turning it around to being head of the midfield again and extending the lead of 3rd place in the championship after 2 good weekends for Ferrari.
Yeah, it was, especially from Ricciardo. We said he needed to have a big weekend, and he did. He was able to get into Q3, admittedly only in 10th, but still. And then I thought he had a brilliant start. He made a good move around Norris on the outside going into turn 1, and I think he nearly took Leclerc as well. He kind of got alongside Leclerc or half alongside, but wasn't able to get that done. So yeah, I thought if I didn't do a winners and losers piece with this one, but if I had been, he would have been right up there. And yeah, from McLaren as a whole, like you say, it's kind of been the Ferrari show over the past couple of weeks with the podiums and the pole positions. But yeah, this is a good showing from McLaren, and going to, again, at Austria, I think they done decently over the last few races there from my memory of it. So yeah, it kind of feels like it could be a bit of a McLaren triple header, and great to see Ricciardo doing better, and hopefully he can continue that at Austria.
Yeah, I thought Lando Norris was fantastic. He went a bit longer on the first stint, which gave him some slightly fresher tyres for his second stint, and he overtook quite a few cars. He overtook Leclerc, Sainz, Gasly. He overtook some drivers who started on the hards as well, like the Alfa Romeo drivers as well. So he made some great overtakes, really showed his talent in terms of racecraft there. And I think McLaren, they seem to have great race pace, which is proving crucial in the midfield, because you do start, if you don't have a good qualifying, you might have the option of starting on a different tyre if you're 11th or whatever. So, and it's more important to have better race pace, I think, in the midfield battle. So, yeah, a great weekend for McLaren, and it could be quite an important one considering how bad Ferrari were on Sunday. Yeah,
you're right, and it works as a nice counterpoint to Ferrari, is that how the McLaren is really gentle on its tires and fast at the same time, whereas when the Ferrari's fast, it's a beast to its tires. So yeah, let's talk about Ferrari. They qualified 5th and 7th, I want to say, with Sainz in 5th and Gasly 7th. Not Gasly, Leclerc 7th. Gasly splits them. I think.
Yeah, we've fast forwarded 5 years.
5 years. You think Gasly's going to be in that can be a whole fun podcast there. But yes, so Sainz was in 11th at the flag, 8 seconds off the points, and Leclerc was a lap down in 16th, behind Antonio Giovinazzi, because Aston Alfa Romeo did quite a good long one-stop strategy, and they did the Norris strategy, did Alfa Romeo. But yeah, Ferrari eat their tyres up, had to pit very early, and then were just outplayed by the more strategically tyre-friendly minded other teams alongside them, do we think?
Yeah, I think they had a good start to the race. I think Leclerc got to 6th, possibly. But yeah, they had a good start, and then, yeah, like you say, they pitted early and I think lost out to Gasly and Ricciardo and probably Norris as well there. And then I kind of forgot they existed for the rest of the race, going to be honest. I was too busy, too absorbed by the battle at the front. and Ricardo and the kind of upper midfield, and forgot about them existing, being a team in F1 racing.
What insight from Adam Dickinson there. I forgot they're a team in racing in F1.
The most successful team in F1 ever and the biggest one. Yeah, but
they're out the.
I know what you mean, though. They strategized themselves out of contention and just became innocuous by the end because they needed to get to the flag. Otherwise, they would have been going at a snail's pace. They needed to go at, I don't know, a slightly quicker snail's pace, but because of their fresher tires on.
A racing snail's pace.
Wasn't there a film about a racing snail?
Yeah, I'm sure there was. Yeah. Anyway,
can't remember it. I think it was probably awful.
We did at school, at primary school, we went through a spell where we did snail racing, where but they weren't very fast. And then
better on them.
24-hour race.
No, we had snails, and then we'd go, and then we wait a whole lunchtime, and they'd have got over one brick, and then that'd be declared the winner.
So it's parkour. It's like Total Wipeout, but for snails, climbing over a brick.
Yeah,
being moved near a brick by school kids, and then hope they'll climb over it.
I don't know if that's kind of cruelty to animals now, or so I don't know. Maybe the RSPCA.
Maybe the snails loved it.
Yeah, probably. Then they just went back to their lives with great stories to tell.
Well, that snail now is Charles Leclerc in 16th place, ahead of Kimi Räikkönen. Fair play. Fair play, snail.
Pessimism stakes. No, we'll do them later.
It's all pessimism stakes, considering, Adam, you completely forgot about everyone in the race apart from the front three. So,
I remember some drivers. It's just Ferrari that I particularly forgot about.
I've been trying to work out what went wrong with Ferrari, because they often pole position back to back and then just dropping so far back in the race. It was bizarre. The only thing I can think of is they've got some slightly different tyre and wing rules that were introduced for the weekend, and perhaps Ferrari have been affected the most because of the way their car is, but also they might have got the setup completely wrong, which just exacerbated their pace, perhaps.
Well, Carlos Sainz said afterwards that their tyre wear was basically 2 times that of their competitors, and Charles Leclerc said that they had 5 or 6 laps they could actually use a bit of pace in the tyre, and then it was just nothing.
Yeah, they were 4 seconds slower at one point than their rivals, which is huge amount. It's just crazy. Yeah, literally, it's just.
At school we.
Adam has a story about snails. Wasn't there a film about a racing snail? But anyway, but yeah, that's the thing. They just eat their tires like there's no tomorrow, and they've got to remember there is a tomorrow, and it's actually the next lap of the race they've got to get to. That's the thing.
The thing is, it's good in a way for one lap pace, and when it is cold, as we saw in Monaco and Baku, that they were able to qualify first. But if you're eating the tyres like that, that is just crazy. But we've not really seen the tyre wear be that bad so far this year. So it suggests to me that they got the setup completely wrong, and I hope for them that it was a one-off, because it was a return to last year when they just went backwards in the race. It was just utterly bizarre, and hopefully, for Ferrari's sake, it's a one-off, because they cannot afford races like that. And I don't think both drivers did too much wrong either. I thought they both drove well. They just had a car that ate its tyres for breakfast.
And Sainz he finished second at Monaco. He was in the midfield battle for all of that. So it's not just that they do one lap and then implode. It is, they've been strong in the season and they've got good race results, but it's just this weekend particularly, and that they've just not been anywhere near that. And Baku, I think part of Baku might have been the straights as well, that they just couldn't defend on the 85-mile long straight. So
but they could cool their tyres down on the straight. That's the thing. This track is a bit more relentless. When you look at it, I think it is very track specific. There's lots of high speed corners with high degradation in high speed corners. The loads going onto those tyres is unreal. So hopefully it is track specific. I know we do have some tracks like Silverstone, and to be fair, Austria to an extent with some really high speed corners there now. Now the pace these cars go, and with it being quite a worn track surface since we first went back there in 2014 now, they could be in for a bit of a rough few races till we get to somewhere like Hungary, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought too, Freddie, initially. But then I remembered in Spain, they were pretty good. I think they were the best midfield team, or joint best midfield team. And Spain is full of high-speed corners now, and there's not many straights.
That's a good point, that.
So I think they've just gone the wrong way with the setup somewhere, and it's just killed the tyres, I think.
I think in Spain, they're probably helped by the fact that other cars were trying to be a bit brave with the tyres as well. Like in Spain, you had the Alpines and a few other cars just falling away with 5 laps to go, and they were probably flat as a touch there. But everyone else seemed to cotton onto that by this race, and they hadn't, I suppose you could say. But that's enough about Ferrari, because we're going around in circles about their woes. And I think
like they are in
like every car really in the race. And I think we should talk about Pierre Gasly, because he's soundly doing fantastic.
Can we touch on Perez first? So
that's a good point, actually.
We've not actually talked about his race yet. We've
talked about him.
Yeah, we've talked about him in relation to
who?
The battle from between the two Mercedes and Verstappen, but he did actually beat one of the Mercedes, and he quietly had a very good race and picked up another podium for Red Bull on, pulled a good stint on his tyres, and I just think it's kind of he's worth a mention.
I think his drive on Sunday was every bit as good as his race in Baku.
I'd agree.
Except, he didn't win, obviously, but I think in terms of the execution, I think he got it absolutely spot on, and it's exactly what Red Bull need. And with Perez being within 10 seconds throughout the whole race, or whatever it was, it didn't allow Mercedes to make the second pit stop because of Red Bull's straight line speed. I think with Perez wasn't there, Mercedes might have then gone on to a 2-stopper, tried something different. But because he was there, and with Red Bull's great straight line speed at the weekend, it forced Mercedes to go long. So Perez is doing exactly what Red Bull need. Overtaking Bottas later on was just something extra, and took more points away from Mercedes as well. So he's doing a fantastic job, is Sergio Perez.
Yeah, and he was falling off. It felt like kind of the opposite of what you said, Nigel, about maybe Bottas's decision to try and stick with the front trio. I know in the first stint, kind of Perez was falling off, and I think it was about the same gap from him to Bottas as it was from him behind to, I think, Ricciardo at that stage. It was
clever.
He just raced so smartly, and then we all know what he can do on his tyres, and he got the move done on Bottas at the end as well. So, but I think like you say, he's doing the job that Red Bull need him to, and that's kind of allowing Verstappen to do things and do his thing, and he's taking points off Mercedes in the last few races. He's taken so many points off Mercedes.
Yeah. He has done. And he's third in the championship. He's on 84 points. He's still only something like 8 points ahead of Norris, but that just says volumes about what Norris is doing this year. But yeah, if you look at where Perez was a couple of rounds ago, and we were thinking, okay, where will he be? Is he all right? That kind of thing. And now there
are people saying, "Oh, they should get Albon back." I mean, what nonsense was that?
They should have, to be fair.
What absolute nonsense!
Goodness, did you see the glint in his eye there? It was terrifying.
It was. When I saw some of that, I'm like thinking, what are people thinking? It's been 5 races, man. And he's already been better anyway. What are they looking at? How could people think Albon would do a better? Albon wouldn't have done that.
You can't see next to Nigel is the hole in his wall that he's been headbutting, not punching, headbutting.
But what they should have done is put Kvyat in the car and then put Perez and Albon in the AlphaTauri, and then they could have got the comparison there, and then put one of them in the Red Bull. So yeah, but I mean, just on the serious kind of note to that, I think last year and then kind of start of this year, I was thinking Bottas could be, or Red Bull could be a great landing spot for Bottas, because he's kind of proven number 2 driver, and could go there and do a job if I'm sure we'll talk about this more in the Austria preview, but if he's not needed at Mercedes anymore. But at the moment, I wouldn't take him. I'd keep Perez every day of the week based off what we've seen so far, and that's just the job he's done, especially over the last 2 races. He's really been a difference maker.
That's precisely it. He's made a difference. You're right. And Nigel, you compared it to Barcelona, and he has made a difference in Barcelona. And now he's made a difference in France. So good on you, Checo. And I want to see more from him because I'm a big Checo fan.
Not Barcelona.
He didn't make a difference in Barcelona.
Yeah, he was rubbish there, and that's why people were angry, which he shouldn't have been because it was one race.
That's why people are angry. But yeah, so now moving back down the order, still in the Red Bull family, to another driver who's making the difference, who you may have heard that I accidentally nearly spoke about too early, which is Pierre Gasly, who qualified 6th, finished 7th.
You did talk about him too early.
No, let's not go on about that. I think he had a great race, and we can talk about how much he is outshining Tsunoda in a bit. I think because Tsunoda had his 3rd qualifying crash in 20 of 7 races. He's not really had a clean weekend since really testing in the first weekend, frankly. And Gasly's proving that he's knocking on the door of that elite level of driver, would you say?
I think with Tsunoda, it feels a bit like Albon last year, where it's like you're kind of waiting for the perfect weekend, and there's always something comes up. I think at one point in one of the many group chats we have with us in Nigel, personally, like, how are people crashing here? How are people finding the walls at Paul Ricard?
Yeah.
But if on Tsunoda, Gasly again, it's not a story anymore. It's not kind of out of the ordinary when he provides these drives, and
he's sound.
He's very sound. He
it's very fit.
I can't remember if he got jumped at the pits or whether I think he might have jumped maybe the Ferraris, but he's bringing home mega points. He's showing that he is a really strong midfield driver in the AlphaTauri. That I think it does suit him, but equally, you look at where his teammate is, and he's still having to kind of make up a lot of that gap, because the McLaren is a faster car, and the Ferrari seems to be at more tracks too. Again, it just feels like a travesty that he hasn't got kind of a seat for next season, and that there's kind of still question marks over whether he'll be in F1 next year, because he should absolutely be, and there should be a queue of teams lining up to have him.
I think Gasly, the last 3 weekends, Monaco, Azerbaijan, and now France, he's been excellent, and he's making up for missed opportunities in the first 2 Grand Prix, because in Bahrain he had that tangle with Ricciardo, potential big points lost there, and then in Imola they started on the wet, so they should have used inters. He could have had big points there, so he's kind of made up for that with his podium, with his great driving, especially in the race. I think his tyre management has really, really improved. He's one of the not the best, but he's definitely right up there now in terms of getting the most out of his tyres. So he's standing out once again, and I just hope he can continue it, because it's fantastic to see. And I think AlphaTauri are now 5th in the constructors' standings, which is a bit of a surprise considering how bad Tsunoda has been, and AlphaTauri's not so great start to the season.
I think it says a lot about Aston and Alpine, which are both way off where their father teams were last season.
It does, and it says a lot about just how a cool head Gasly's developed in the past 2 years in Formula One. After his ousting from Red Bull, it's a story that's been told a lot, but if Perez wasn't doing what Perez is doing, Gasly would be surely creating a bit of a headache for that Red Bull seat once again, which is something Kvyat could never do, and that's mad for Gasly to be able to do that. And I think, fantastic job. Rounding out,
I was just going to say, just finishing off that, it did kind of feel like coming into the season there were question marks over where Gasly would be, and it felt like Kvyat had levelled up with him in the run-in at the end of last season, or maybe Gasly had dropped off a bit from where he'd been kind of earlier in the season and when he took his win. And then obviously Bahrain happened and that piled maybe more pressure on him. But since then, he has just, like you said, Freddie, over the last few races, he's been flawless, or maybe Nigel. So, yeah, just want to add that.
Nigel has been flawless over the past few races, it's true. Rounding out the points for Alpine and Aston Martin, Alonso in 8th, who was a second off Gasly, actually. Alonso's had a cracking weekend, I think. I think it's safe to say. I think he's been the better Alpine driver for probably the first time this year. Maybe he was and in Baku he was good, but he benefited a bit more from circumstance there. But he's definitely been the better Alpine driver, and that's good from Alonso. That's what we want to see from him. We want to see him haranguing Gasly and Ricciardo to the flag, which is what he did. And
Adam didn't like that.
Adam didn't like that at all.
No, it wasn't that. I just found it funny. This image of him like leaning out of his cockpit and shaking his fist at them. They're like driving in the last stint of the race.
Get out the way. Yeah, that's what he was doing. He's got a lot of emotion.
Fernando Alonso thing.
Yeah.
I could see him doing that. But yeah, it was great. And it didn't look good early on. I think he was going backwards on the medium tyre, it would have been. But then on the hard tyres, a bit like Portimao, he came back through in the second half of the race. So great drive. And it's a good thing Ocon has signed his contract for another few years, because if he performs like that, then he should be worried. But luckily he has renewed his contract.
Yeah, well, I think just kind of if he can perform like that and Ocon can get back up to the level he's been for a lot of the season, I think Alpine could have a very strong driver lineup, and that could prove the difference in their battle with Aston Martin.
People want the Alpine juniors in the car, don't they?
That's different
this week. Nigel, that's different. People like them, but they also like these guys, but they don't want the juniors to be left out.
But they're not good enough.
Let's talk about this for Austria, because I feel I've got a fair bit to say on this as well. It sounds like Nigel does too. But yeah, I think it looks like Aston and then maybe AlphaTauri, too many A teams, will be their main competitors this year. So if they can kind of combine Ocon's performance over kind of a bit earlier in the season and Alonso's performance today, then, or over the last couple of races, then they should be out. That could be, I think, the difference there.
Aston Martin.
It was just a nice. It was just a nice weekend for Alonso. It's like positive. It's like it's Alonso. He's doing well, and he's like happy, and he got a good result, and it's just positive. It's nice to see Alonso doing well.
It is. It very much is, because the storyline has been a bit Ocon out of nowhere, which is a bit of a shame for Alonso. But yeah, moving swiftly on, we've got to kind of raffle through things now. Aston Martin had a very good strategy once again, particularly for Stroll, who's coming from 19th. Both started on the hard tyres, went very long, very, very long, and
too long,
and got the points. They probably did go a few laps too long, and they probably could have closed up on Alonso, Gasly, and Ricciardo if they'd gone, because Vettel was 2 seconds off or something at the end from that 3.
Was he?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe 2.5. But if they had pitted Vettel a lap or two earlier, he probably could have been on the back of them and in even higher points. But Aston Martin made a alternative one stop, pay dividends with a double points finish, and I think that's their second double points of the season. I'm not sure.
Their second, yeah.
But that's good double points from when you're starting. I don't know wherever they started, 13th and 19th, or 12th and 19th for Aston Martin. So good recovery from them. Sainz we've spoken about in 11th, but 12th place is George Russell, who has single-handedly promoted Williams to 9th in the Constructors' Championship by already surpassing Haas's 13th and 14th places at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Well done, George.
That was 12th with full finishers as well. It's kind of, I feel like the asterisk is important.
It is.
Great point, but not actually any points for George, because he has a great race, and it's the one race that no one in front of him retires. So,
10th race ever where no one has retired.
Yeah, and he picks it to be the one that he was just 2 places away from the points finish. But a fantastic point on that. And just quickly, because you mentioned Vettel, I'll just make this quick, but it's great. He seems to, mention confidence after Baku, and that is just growing again. So it's only 2 races, and we'll see again at Austria whether that continues.
Monaco
But,
and Monaco.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, it does seem to be building, and hopefully, fingers crossed for him, because that's 2 world champions that have kind of
Happy.
not had the best start for the season, but now they're happy, and that's nice.
It is nice.
Oh, there was a nice photo that did the rounds. That was Vettel had brought his Alonso helmets that he'd done in trades with Alonso to the circuit to get signed by Alonso, and he brought them with him presumably from Germany to the track to get Alonso to sign them. And there was a picture of them signing stuff, which is quite sweet. Very
probably
happy.
when they're in a title fight, they probably wasn't on the cards to do that.
That didn't happen after 2012 Brazil, did it? 2010 Abu Dhabi.
Alonso got really drunk and drew a tattoo stamp on the back of Vettel's back, and that's still there to this day. In my fan fiction Formula One world.
I hope we get to see them. I hope we get to see them having an on-track battle, because we've not had it so far between Vettel and Alonso. So some wheel-to-wheel action between them soon would be fantastic for the sport, I think. I'm thinking back to that Silverstone battle they had in 2014.
Oh,
that was
one of the best battles
brilliant.
in the turbo hybrid era. That
if we could start to have some of that action, that'd be great.
Hombre a hombre, mano a mano.
Yeah. But yeah, Russell.
Just Mexican standoff type language. Sorry, Russell.
Yeah, I was just saying Russell outstanding.
Sorry,
I think that was. I mean, I probably rated him too low in the article thing I did, because I think it was probably his best race he's ever had for Williams. It was
you gave him a 3.
Great. Yeah. Go check it out to see what score I did. I gave him an 8. I should have probably gave him a bit higher, I think. But it was brilliant. Like you said, Adam. There were no retirement. And he didn't even get the best of starts either, because he fell behind Latifi. But then he came back through. I think he started on the mediums, then went to the hards, which was the opposite of what some other drivers were doing. And he made it work. So it was absolutely fantastic driving. The perfect time to do it as well, because at this time of the year, everyone's talking about next year, whether he'll be driving for Mercedes or whatever. So a brilliant performance from Russell.
Well, he wants to get his hopefully Mercedes contract sorted by the British Grand Prix, which is in under 4 weeks now. So, George, keep it up. You've got 2 Austrian races to do that again, and I think we'd all very much like him to do that again, because Nigel and I really want him to do that again. And
go on, George, do it.
You could well be.
Pick it at a crazy race. Do that, but at like a race where 5 people retire from the top 10, and then get your point.
Be 7.
Be smart. Be like Perez. Race smart, not hard. Or both.
Race smart, not hard. I like that.
Yeah. That's what Perez says before he goes to sleep every night. Says it to himself. Race smart, not hard. Then he's out. He's out for the count. Then he starts snoring immediately. It's insane how he does this. We should also just do a quick rundown. Ocon 14th. Do you have a noise for Ocon as a result? I think. What do you guys think? Thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
Yeah,
good noise.
It felt like Alpine were kind of running extra positive in practice because of their home race, and then it kind of fell off a bit, especially for Ocon.
Quick, do a low fuel run. Don't work on the setup. Do a low fuel run.
We'll be in the top 5. Wow, we're French.
Wow, it's blue. You can't see us in the track. But yes, we're going to have a quick pessimism stakes. 15th Giovinazzi, 17th Raikkonen. Another noise.
I feel like
this for Alpha.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do better. I think off practice, I thought they might be kind of in the running for another points finish, but Aston kind of stole that particular thunder. But this is why we have the pessimism stakes, because we wouldn't talk about them otherwise. So it's doing its job.
Probably one of the worst weekends, actually, thinking about it.
Ever.
Well, this year.
Oh.
It could be ever, could be, but I don't know what they were doing, 60, 50 years ago.
Oh, Sauber weren't a team then. But yeah.
Alfa Romeo might have been, though.
Alfa Romeo were. They won the first Formula One World Championship, so they were doing all right. But yeah, Latifi, 18th. Not very good, really. Actually, looking at where Russell is, that's really not very good.
Yeah, I feel like Latifi might have to be the Pessimism Stakes feature next year. 'Cause it feels like perennially
when he's not on the grid.
It just feels like perennially we have nothing to say about him, and that continues again today. Haas,
Yeah.
Mick Schumacher, Q2. Then he crashed.
They need to change that rule. You can't have drivers who cause a red flag going into the next quali session.
So what do you want to do? Like shoot them?
Yes, you can, because he did a fast enough lap time.
Add an extra 2 minutes or delete their fastest time.
Put claymores around the edge of the...
Add an extra 2 minutes to the session, sorry, not the lap time.
That'll definitely cause a red flag. You put claymores around the track,
and
everyone will
explode.
cause a red flag.
It's like, you shouldn't have been in the race to get to Q2.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher, Q2, very good. But 19th and 20th for Schumacher and Mazepin. More stirring in the pot between the Schumacher-Mazepin hatred storyline, which I think we can definitely touch on in our next episode. But with Mazepin throwing it up the inside of Schumacher for no reason again, and Schumacher still beating him. Quite fun.
Next episode, I would also like to touch on the Q3 or qualifying red flag stuff, because I feel like we could have more of a discussion around that.
Yes, we can.
There is no time now.
There is a lot to look forward to in the next episode. I'm sure you've enjoyed this Paul Ricard review, but the key point here is check out the next episode. We're going to have a steering Grand Prix preview episode. Adam is writing a quiz for it, I think, or Nigel is. Someone's writing a quiz for it. Nigel's writing a quiz for it, and Adam and I are going to answer questions about it. And then we're going to talk about what we just said we're going to talk about. I bet you can't wait. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, Adam's going to hit Nigel. All right, through the screens. So we hope you enjoyed that. We certainly did. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Delete as appropriate. Please take care of yourselves, everybody, and see you next time on the Winging It F1 podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.